The interrogation chamber fell silent, except for the rhythmic drip of crimson against durasteel. Captain Vex Nala, of the Hegemony's Ninth Fleet, watched with satisfaction as another drop of human blood struck the floor. The prisoner, Lieutenant Kairos Dane of the Terran Marine Corps, hung suspended in neural restraints, his body racked with agony from the psychic torturers. "Your silence serves no purpose, mammal," Vex Nala hissed through mandibles that clicked with amusement. Six Eyes studied the human's defiant expression. "We know Earth's fleet positions. We know your supply routes. Tell us about Project Shadowfall, and your suffering ends." Dane's head lifted slowly, gray eyes burning with an intensity that made even the seasoned hegemony captain pause. Blood trickled from his nose, evidence of the neural probes that had been scraping at his mind for 72 hours. Yet somehow, impossibly, his consciousness remained intact. "Go to hell," he whispered, then smiled. It was not the smile of a broken man, the smile of someone who knew something they didn't. In the depths of space, 3 light years from the hegemony prison ship Torment's edge, something stirred. The void itself seemed to shiver as sensors that registered on no known spectrum, detected the psychic screaming of a human mind under torture. Ancient protocols, buried deep in quantum-encrypted code, began to activate. The ship had no name in any conventional sense. To those few humans who knew of its existence, it was simply called the Revenant. It had been drifting in the darkness, for 15 years waiting, watching. Its hull was composed of materials that bent light and gravity around itself, rendering it invisible to all known detection methods. Its AI was not artificial. It was something far more dangerous. It was the digitized consciousness of Admiral Kyrix Holt, Earth's most decorated and ruthless military commander, who had volunteered for the neural transfer when terminal cancer claimed his body. His mind now lived within the ship's quantum matrix, fused with its systems in ways that made the boundary between man and machine meaningless. The ship's sensors locked onto the source of the psychic distress. Lieutenant Dane's neural signature was on file. He had served under Holt during the Proxima campaign. The Admiral's loyalty to his soldiers had been legendary in life. In death, it had become something far more terrible. Sensor sweep complete. The ship's voice resonated through empty corridors. Holt's voice, but filtered through harmonics that no human throat could produce. Target acquired. Hegemony prison vessel. Configuration: Dominator class. Crew complement: approximately 8,000. The Revenant's hull began to shift, metamorphic armor plates rearranging themselves as weapon systems that violated several galactic treaties powered up. The ship had been built with one purpose: to be Earth's final answer to extinction. A weapon so terrible that its very existence was classified beyond black. Back aboard the Torment's edge, Vex Nala gestured to her, Torturer, a grotesque creature whose specialty was flaying minds layer by layer. "Increase the neural pressure. If he won't speak, we'll strip every memory from his skull." But as the torturer reached for Dane's temples, every light in the ship flickered, then died. Emergency lighting cast the chamber in hellish red as Vex Nala's communication officer stumbled in, all 6 of his limbs trembling. "Captain, our long-range sensors. They've detected something. It's impossible." "What are you babbling about?" "There's a ship, Captain. It just appeared on our scopes. But according to our readings," the officer's voice cracked, "it shouldn't exist." In the darkness between stars, the Revenant was already moving. The bridge of the Torment's edge erupted in chaos as proximity alarms shrieked their warnings. Captain Vex Nala abandoned the interrogation chamber, her claws scraping against the deck plating as she rushed to her command throne. The main view screen showed nothing but stars, yet their sensors insisted something massive was approaching. "Report!" she snapped at her tactical officer, a scarred veteran named Kuldrath, whose species had evolved from apex predators. "Contact is Shifting, Captain. Mass readings fluctuate between frigate and dreadnought class. It's like the ship is changing. Kuldrath's 3 hearts hammered against his ribcage as he studied readings that defied physics. Whatever it is, it's decelerating from hyperspace velocities without any visible propulsion signature. The Revenant materialized from nothingness like a fever dream given form. Its hull seemed to flow like liquid mercury, constantly shifting between configurations. Weapon ports opened and closed like breathing apertures. To those watching, it appeared less like a vessel and more like a living entity that had learned to swim through vacuum. Admiral Holt's consciousness inhabited every circuit, every sensor, every weapon system. He felt the ship's hull as his own skin, experienced the fusion reactors as his heartbeat. Through quantum-entangled sensors, he could perceive the interior of the hegemony vessel with perfect clarity, including the broken form of Lieutenant Dane. The young Marine was dying. Neural torture had pushed his mind to the breaking point, and Holt could sense the synaptic damage spreading through Dane's cortex. Rage, pure, distilled fury, flooded the ship's systems. The Admiral had lost. Too many good soldiers to let another die on his watch. "Broadcasting on all frequencies!" Holt's voice thundered across space, reaching every hegemony ship within a dozen light years. The transmission bypassed their communications systems entirely, speaking directly to their neural implants. "I am Admiral Kyrix Holt of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have something that belongs to me." Aboard the Torment's edge, Vexanala felt ice crystallize in her alien blood. Every member of the hegemony military knew that name. Holt was the architect of humanity's most devastating victories, the strategist who had turned certain defeat into Pyrrhic victory time and again. But Holt was dead. They had confirmed his death through intelligence networks. "Impossible," she whispered. "Scan that ship again. I want to know what we're facing." Her science officer, a nervous creature whose species communicated through bioluminescent patterns, flickered in distress. "Captain, the readings are wrong. The ship appears to be constructed from materials that shouldn't exist. Its power signature suggests it's drawing energy directly from quantum vacuum, and the AI governing its systems..." The creature's lights pulsed in terror. "It's not artificial intelligence, Captain. It's a living consciousness." The realization hit Vexnala like a plasma bolt to the chest. The humans hadn't just built a ship, they had created a digital resurrection. They had bound the soul of their greatest military mind to a vessel of war. "Raise shields! All weapons to full power!" she commanded. "If Holt wants his soldier back, he can try to take him from the wreckage of his precious ship." The Torment's edge was a formidable vessel, armed with particle beam arrays and quantum torpedoes capable of cracking planets. Its shields could withstand the combined firepower of an entire fleet. The hegemony had built it to be unsinkable. They had not built it to face the Revenant. Holt's laughter echoed through space, a sound like grinding metal and screaming wind. "You misunderstand the situation, Captain. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to collect." The Revenant didn't move toward the hegemony ship. Instead, it simply disappeared. Not cloaked, not invisible. Gone. As if it had stepped sideways out of reality itself. Vexanala's sensors screamed warnings from every direction, and none. Her gunners fired blindly into empty space while their targeting computers suffered cascading failures. The ship's AI began reporting impossible readings. The Revenant was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, existing in multiple quantum states at once. Then the lights went out, not just on the bridge, but throughout the entire ship. 8,000 crew members suddenly found themselves in absolute darkness as every system, life support, artificial gravity, even their neural implants, went silent. In that darkness, something spoke with Admiral Holt's voice. "Did you really think you could hide from me in the black?" The Torment's edge had become a tomb of living metal. In the absolute darkness, 8,000 hegemony soldiers found themselves trapped in their own vessel, their sophisticated technology reduced to worthless scrap by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't touch, couldn't even comprehend. Captain Vex Nala groped through the blackness of her bridge, her 6 eyes useless without light. The only sound was the collective breathing of her crew, rapid, panicked inhalations that spoke of barely controlled terror. She had fought in 17 major campaigns, witnessed the glassing of worlds, commanded ships through the hellfire of stellar warfare. But this was different. This was primal fear, the kind that lived in the genetic memory of every sentient species. Emergency power, she screamed into the darkness. Manual overrides, anything. Nothing responded. The ship's fusion reactors had been shut down through methods that should have been impossible. The Torment's edge was now a dead hulk, drifting in space like a discarded toy. Deep within the ship's bowels, Lieutenant Dane hung in his restraints, his consciousness flickering between awareness and oblivion. But even through the haze of neural damage, he could feel something changing. The psychic pressure that had been flaying his mind for days was gone, replaced by something else, something that felt like a protective embrace. A voice spoke directly into his mind, not through his ears, but through quantum entanglement with his neural pathways. It was a voice he recognized from recorded briefings, from military documentaries, from the legends that every Marine carried in their heart. "Hold on, son. I'm coming for you." Admiral Holt's consciousness flowed through the Revenant like digital, blood through quantum veins. The ship had bonded with his mind so completely that he could perceive reality through spectrums that had no names. He saw the hegemony vessel not as a physical object, but as a collection of energy patterns, information flows, and vulnerable points. The Revenant phased through the enemy ship's hull like a ghost passing through stone. Its matter displacement field allowed it to exist in a state of quantum superposition, neither fully in normal space nor completely outside it. To the hegemony sensors, it was everywhere and nowhere, a paradox that their equipment couldn't process. Inside the Torments, Edge crew members began to report impossible sightings, shadows that moved independently of any light source, the sound of footsteps in empty corridors, whispers in languages that predated galactic civilization. "Captain," Kuldrath's voice cracked as he spoke into the darkness. "My tactical station just came online for 3 seconds. The readings were, the human ship is inside our hull, moving through our corridors. That's impossible. Solid matter can't." His words were cut off by a scream from the lower decks. Then another. And another. Vex Nala's blood ran cold as she realized what was happening. The Revenant wasn't just a ship, it was a predator, and it was hunting her crew. The first hegemony soldier to encounter the Revenant's physical manifestation was a guard named Thexmore, stationed outside the armory. He saw light approaching through the corridor. Not the harsh illumination of ship's lighting, but something softer, more organic. As it drew closer, he realized it wasn't light at all. It was a humanoid figure composed of pure energy, wearing the uniform of a Terran admiral. "You're not supposed to be here," Thexmore stammered, raising his plasma rifle with trembling hands. Admiral Holt's digital ghost smiled, the expression of terrible patience. "Neither are you." The energy construct reached out with one hand. Thexmore's weapon simply stopped. The plasma charge dissipated harmlessly as the rifle's molecular structure rearranged itself into something resembling a flower. The guard stared at the impossible transformation, his mind struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. "Where is the human prisoner?" Holt asked, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Thexmore's bones. I don't... The interrogation. "Deck level 7, section..." The guard's words tumbled out in a rush of terror. "Thank you." Holt's form began to fade. "You have 10 minutes to abandon ship. I suggest you use them wisely." Throughout the Torment's edge, similar encounters played out. Hegemony soldiers found themselves face to face with an entity that existed beyond their understanding of physics. Some tried to fight, others tried to run. A few, the wiser ones, simply collapsed to their knees in surrender. None of it mattered. The Revenant was already moving toward its primary objective. In the interrogation chamber, Vexanala had managed to find her way back to where Lieutenant Dane hung in his restraints. She pressed a neural disruptor against his temple, her hands shaking with rage and fear. "I know you can hear me, Holt," she screamed into the darkness. "Show yourself, or I'll scramble what's left of his brain." The response came not from the corridor or the ventilation system, but from directly behind her. A whisper in her ear that made her exoskeleton crawl with terror. "I'm already here." Captain Vexnala spun around, the neural disruptor trembling in her grasp. Behind her stood a figure that should not have existed. Admiral Kyrix Holt, exactly as he had appeared in military broadcasts, down to the scar across his left cheek and the stars on his collar. But this version of Holt was composed of shifting energy patterns, his form occasionally flickering between solid matter and pure light. "Let me guess," Holt said, his voice carrying the weight of digital eternity. "You're going to threaten my soldier's life unless I surrender." His eyes, points of fierce blue radiance, never left her face. "It's a classic tactic, crude but sometimes effective." Vexnala pressed the disruptor harder against Dane's temple. The device hummed with lethal energy, capable of reducing a human brain to neural static in milliseconds. "Stay back! I'll kill him!" "No," Holt replied with absolute certainty. "You won't?" The Admiral raised his hand, and Vexanala felt her weapon begin to change. The neural disruptor's components rearranged themselves at the molecular level, transforming from an instrument of torture into something that resembled abstract art. She stared at the impossible sculpture in her grasp, her mind reeling. "How?" she whispered. "I spent 15 years learning to exist as pure information," Holt explained, stepping closer. "Do you know what that means? I can rewrite the quantum structure of matter through focused consciousness. I can exist in multiple locations simultaneously. I can process information at the speed of light." His form solidified, becoming more human and therefore more terrifying. "Most importantly, I can feel every ounce of pain you've inflicted on my soldier." The interrogation chamber's lights flickered to life, powered by the Revenant's presence. In the harsh illumination, Vexnala could see the full extent of what they had done to Lieutenant Dane. Burns covered his arms where neural probes had tested his pain tolerance. His face was a map of bruises and cuts, but his eyes, those gray eyes that had defied her for 72 hours, were still alert, still unbroken. "Sir," Dane whispered, his voice barely audible. "Took you long enough." Holt's digital form smiled with genuine warmth. "Sorry about that, Lieutenant. Had to make sure I brought enough firepower to the party." He turned back to Vexnala, the temperature in the room dropping several degrees. "Release him, now." "The hegemony doesn't negotiate with terrorists," Vexnala snarled, though her mandibles clicked with fear. "Terrorist?" Holt laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Captain, I haven't even begun to terrorize you yet." The walls of the interrogation chamber began to change. Metal flowed like water, rearranging itself into shapes that hurt to look at. The ceiling opened to reveal not the ship's corridor above, but a view of infinite space filled with burning stars. The floor became transparent, showing the Revenant below them, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. "You see, Captain, I've had 15 years to think about what I would do to anyone who tortured my soldiers. 15 years to plan, to prepare, to become something that your nightmares couldn't imagine." Holt's form began to expand, his presence filling the chamber. "Would you like to know what I decided?" Vexanala's nerve broke. She lunged for the chamber's exit, but the door had ceased to exist. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, All of it had become part of the Revenant itself. She was no longer aboard her own ship. She was inside the mind of Admiral Kyrix Holt. "There's nowhere to run," Holt said gently. "But I'm not unreasonable. I'll make you a deal." With a gesture, he freed Lieutenant Dane from his restraints. The young Marine collapsed, his legs unable to support his weight after days of suspension. But he was alive, and that was what mattered. "Here's the offer," Holt continued, helping Dane to his feet. "You have 30 seconds to order your crew to abandon ship. Anyone still aboard after that becomes part of my demonstration." "Demonstration?" Vexnala's voice cracked. "Oh, yes. You see, the hegemony leadership needs to understand something very important about humanity. We don't start wars, but we do finish them. And when someone hurts our people..." Holt's eyes blazed with digital. "Fire! We become monsters beyond your comprehension." The Admiral raised his hand, and throughout the Torment's edge, every communication system activated simultaneously. His voice echoed through every corridor, every compartment, every hiding place, where hegemony soldiers cowered in fear. "Attention, crew of the Torment's edge. You have 30 seconds to reach your escape pods. Anyone who remains aboard will share their captain's fate. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is the only warning you will receive." In the chaos that followed, 8,000 hegemony soldiers scrambled for the evacuation bays. They had no idea what fate awaited their ship, but the primal terror in Admiral Holt's voice was enough to override military discipline. Vexnala remained frozen in place, watching her crew abandon her through monitors that showed every deck of her vessel. 20 seconds, Holt announced calmly. The evacuation was chaos incarnate. 8,000 hegemony soldiers, each member of a species that prided itself on military discipline, fled the Torment's edge like prey animals escaping a forest fire. Escape pods launched in every direction, their crews more concerned with distance than formation. Behind them, their once mighty warship hung motionless in the void, dark except for the eerie bioluminescent patterns that pulsed across its hull. Patterns that spelled out words in ancient Terran script. "Remember us." Captain Vexnala found herself alone in what had once been her interrogation chamber, but now resembled the bridge of the Revenant. Lieutenant Dane sat in a medical chair that had materialized from thin air, nanomachines working, to repair the damage done to his body. His wounds were already closing, neural pathways regenerating under the care of medical technology that was decades ahead of anything the hegemony possessed. "How is this possible?" Vexnala whispered, her 6 eyes fixed on Admiral Holt's impossible form. "The energy requirements alone should make this what? Impossible?" Holt interrupted, his digital consciousness flickering between human and something far more alien. "Captain, you've spent so long assuming the universe operates according to your limitations that you've forgotten one crucial fact. Humanity doesn't ask permission from physics. We negotiate with it." Around them, the Torment's edge continued its transformation. The ship's hull flowed like mercury, reshaping itself according to blueprints that existed only in Holt's digitized mind. Weapon systems dissolved and reformed as research equipment. Armor plating became observation decks. The vessel that had been designed to break worlds was becoming something else entirely, a monument to human ingenuity and alien hubris. "Sir," Lieutenant Dane spoke up, his voice stronger now that the medical nanites had repaired his throat. "What's the mission status? Are we extracting?" Holt's expression softened as he looked at his soldier. "Negative, Lieutenant. We're making a statement." Through the chamber's transformed walls, they could see space filling with more ships. The hegemony's response fleet had arrived, 12 dreadnoughts, twice as many cruisers, and enough fighter craft to darken local space. It was enough firepower to sterilize a solar system. Admiral Nex Valder, commanding the rescue fleet from his flagship Inexorable Truth, opened communications with the hybrid vessel. His reptilian features were rigid with barely controlled fury as Holt's image appeared on his view screen. "Admiral Holt," Nexvaldur hissed, his forked tongue tasting the air. "I am ordering you to surrender immediately. Release Captain Vexnala, and prepare to be boarded." Holt's laughter filled the communication channel. "Surrender, Admiral? I think you misunderstand the tactical situation." "The situation is perfectly clear," Nexvaldur replied. "You have one ship. I have 57. The mathematics are simple." "Are they?" Holt's image shifted, becoming less human and more digital construct. "Tell me, Admiral, what do your sensors report about my vessel's current status?" Nexvaldur glanced at his tactical display and felt his blood chill. According to their instruments, the ship before them was simultaneously one vessel and 58. The Revenant existed in multiple quantum states, each one a potential threat vector. His fleet's targeting computers were having cascading failures trying to lock onto something that occupied every possible position within a cubic light second of space. "Quantum superposition," Holt explained conversationally. "I exist in all possible states until observed, and since I control what can observe me," he gestured, and every targeting system in the hegemony fleet went offline. "You're essentially shooting at ghosts." But Holt wasn't finished. As the rescue fleet watched in growing horror, the Torment's edge began to split, not break apart, divide. Each quantum state became a separate physical reality, until 58 identical ships faced the hegemony fleet. Each one carried the same impossible energy signature. Each one was crewed by Admiral Holt's distributed consciousness. "Impossible," Nexvaldur breathed. "You keep using that word," Holt replied from 58 different view screens simultaneously. "I don't think it means what you think it means." The demonstration that followed was less a battle than a lesson in applied physics. The hegemony. Fleet opened fire with everything they had: particle beams, quantum torpedoes, antimatter warheads. Their weapons struck the duplicate ships and simply stopped. Energy dissipated harmlessly into space. Matter reverted to component atoms. The laws of physics bent around the Revenant variants like water around a stone. In response, Holt's fleet didn't fire a single shot. Instead, they began to sing. The sound propagated through hyperspace, reaching every hegemony world within 100 light years. It was not music in any conventional sense, but something deeper. The quantum resonance of human consciousness converted to pure information and broadcast across the galaxy. To hegemony ears, it sounded like mourning and rage combined, like the last breath of dying stars. But embedded within that cosmic requiem was a message, transmitted in mathematical constants that any spacefaring civilization would recognize. "This is what happens when you torture our children." On worlds across hegemony space, communication arrays began receiving data packets that bypassed every firewall, every encryption, every defense their cybersecurity experts had devised. The packets contained detailed records of Lieutenant Dane's torture, broadcast alongside tactical assessments of every major hegemony fleet position. The message was clear: "We see you. We know where you are. We remember what you've done." And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the demonstration ended. 57 of the duplicate ships simply faded away, leaving only the original Revenant hanging. In space, Admiral Holt's image appeared one final time on Nexvaldur's view screen. "Your captain will be returned to you in 1 hour," Holt said simply. "She has some information to share with your leadership. I suggest they listen carefully." The medical bay aboard the Revenant existed in a state of impossible perfection. Every surface gleamed with the soft radiance of technology that transcended conventional engineering. Lieutenant Dane rested in a regeneration pod that was repairing 15 years of military wear on his body alongside the fresh wounds from his torture. Nanomachines flowed through his bloodstream like microscopic angels, rebuilding neural pathways that had been savaged by hegemony probe techniques. Captain Vexinala stood nearby, her 6 eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fascination. The interrogation chamber had vanished, replaced by something that resembled a cathedral built from starlight and quantum mathematics. She was no longer restrained, but she made no attempt to flee. Where would she run aboard a ship that existed? Partially outside normal spacetime? Why? She asked Admiral Holt, who stood beside Dane's pod monitoring his soldiers' recovery with the dedication of a digital saint. Why show me mercy? Why not simply end this? Holt's form shifted, becoming more solid, more human. It was a deliberate choice, a way of making his words carry the weight of mortality. Because, Captain, killing you would be easy. Teaching you is more valuable. The walls around them became transparent, revealing the hegemony rescue fleet holding position at a respectful distance. Nex Valdor's vessels maintained their formations, but their weapon systems remained powered down. Even the most aggressive admirals in the hegemony navy weren't stupid enough to provoke an entity that had just rewritten local physics. Teach me what? Vexinala asked, though part of her already knew the answer. The cost of your empire's cruelty, Holt replied. His consciousness reached out through quantum entanglement, accessing databases throughout hegemony space. You want to know how I found you? How I tracked down one prison ship among thousands scattered across the galaxy? Vexinala nodded, despite herself. Pain, Holt said simply. Suffering creates ripples in the quantum foam. Every act of torture, every moment of agony, sends out waves that sensitive equipment can detect. For 15 years, I've been mapping those waves, learning their signatures, following their trails back to their sources. The cathedral walls displayed a 3-dimensional map of hegemony space, but instead of showing star systems and trade routes, it revealed something far more horrifying. Red lines connected thousands of worlds, each one representing a trail of pain. Prison worlds, slave colonies, punishment details, all of it connected in a vast network of institutional cruelty. My God, Vexinala whispered, her translator struggling with concepts her language had no words for. Your empire runs on suffering, Holt continued, his voice carrying the weight of digital eternity. You've built a civilization that requires the pain of others to function. But here's what you never understood. Every act of cruelty creates a debt. And debts, Captain, eventually come due. Lieutenant Dane's eyes opened, clear and alert. The fee. Regeneration pod had done its work, not just healing his body, but enhancing it. His reflexes were sharper, his mind clearer, his bones and muscles reinforced with carbon nanotube structures. He was still human, but he had been given the tools to be more than human. How do you feel, son? Holt asked, his paternal concern evident even through his digital nature. Like I could arm wrestle a battleship, sir, Dane replied, sitting up in the pod. And win. Good. You're going to need every advantage where you're going. Going, sir? Holt turned to face both his soldier and the alien captain. You're going home, Lieutenant, both of you. Captain Vexinala is going to deliver a message to the Hegemony High Command, and you're going to deliver one to Earth. The Admiral gestured, and the space around them filled with holographic displays showing Earth's defensive positions, fleet movements, and strategic assessments. Vexinala realized she was seeing intelligence information that should have been impossible for any single entity to gather. The war is coming whether we want it or not, Holt explained. The hegemony has pushed too far, demanded too much, hurt too many of our people. Earth's government is preparing for full-scale conflict, and when that war begins, it will consume half the galaxy. He turned to Vexinala, his eyes blazing with digital fire. Unless your leaders make a very simple choice. What choice? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. Withdraw from all occupied human systems. Release every human prisoner. Cease all torture and forced labor operations within 50 light-years of Earth space. Holt's form began to fade, becoming more energy than matter. In return, humanity will limit its response to defensive actions only. And if we refuse? Admiral Holt smiled, and for a moment, Vexnala glimpsed the true scope of what humanity had created. Not just one ship, but a network of quantum-entangled vessels spread throughout known space. Not just one digitized consciousness, but dozens, maybe hundreds, of Earth's greatest military minds converted to pure information and bound to ships that existed beyond conventional physics. Then you'll discover why humans are the galaxy's apex predators, Holt said softly, and why our mercy is far more valuable than our wrath. The Revenant shimmered, reality bending around its hull as it prepared to return its passengers to their respective fleets. But before the transfer began, Holt had one final message for the Hegemony captain. "Captain Vexnala," he said, his voice carrying the weight of prophecy. "Remember Lieutenant Dane's face. Remember what you did to him. And when you stand before your high command, remember this. He was just one human soldier. Imagine what will become when you threaten all of them." 6 months later, the Hegemony High Command gathered in emergency session aboard their fortress world of Kethmoran. The obsidian spires of their capital pierced the planet's toxic atmosphere like claws reaching toward space. But today those towers offered no comfort to the beings who ruled over 300 worlds. Captain Vexnala stood before the assembled oligarchs, her report having shattered their understanding of galactic warfare. The holographic display behind her showed tactical assessments that still made no sense to their greatest military minds. Ships that existed in quantum superposition, weapons that rewrote the laws of physics, an enemy that had evolved beyond the limitations of conventional spacetime. "You're certain these readings are accurate?" asked Overlord Crixthul, his biomechanical implants clicking as he processed the impossible data. "I witnessed it personally, Overlord," Vexnala replied, her voice steady despite the memories that haunted her sleep. "The human known as Admiral Holt has become something beyond our understanding. And he is not alone." The chamber's massive view screen activated, showing deep space surveillance footage from across Hegemony territory. In system after system, their patrol ships had encountered phenomena that defied explanation. Shadow vessels that appeared on sensors for microseconds before vanishing. Energy signatures that matched no known technology. Most disturbing of all, the systematic liberation of human prisoners from facilities that should have been impossible to locate. 17 labor camps, reported Admiral Nex Valdur, his reptilian features tight with frustration. 43 detention facilities, 9 punishment worlds, all of them emptied within the past 4 months. No battles, no invasions. The humans simply disappeared, along with every piece of surveillance equipment in a 50-kilometer radius. Overlord. Zixandra, eldest of the High Command, raised her crystalline head. Her species measured time in millennia, and she had seen the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations. But this was something new. "What are Earth's formal demands?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. Vexnala activated her personal display, showing the message that had been burned into every Hegemony communication array across 3 sectors. Complete withdrawal from all systems with human populations. Immediate cessation of all torture, forced labor, and detention operations involving human subjects. Reparations for damages inflicted over the past century of occupation. And if we refuse? Then they stop asking nicely. The silence that followed was broken by Admiral Thexkalar, commander of the Third Armada. His species had evolved from apex predators, and his instincts were screaming warnings. "We cannot show weakness. If we yield to human demands, every subject species will see it as an invitation to rebel. And if we fight," Vexnala countered, "we face an enemy that can exist outside the boundaries of physics itself, an enemy that has spent 15 years preparing for this moment." The debate raged for hours, but Overlord Zixandra had already made her decision. She had lived long enough to recognize an evolutionary leap when she saw one. Humanity hadn't just developed new technology. They had transcended the limitations that governed conventional warfare. Meanwhile, in a space that existed between dimensions, the Revenant drifted through quantum foam like a ghost made of starlight. Admiral Holt's consciousness inhabited every system, every circuit, every weapon that had never been fired in anger. Lieutenant Dane stood on what passed for a bridge, though the chamber existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Status report. Lieutenant, Holt's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. All human populations have been extracted from hegemony space, sir, Dane replied, his enhanced physiology allowing him to process the ship's multidimensional nature without disorientation. No casualties, no detectable traces left behind. And our fleet status? 47 vessels now operational, each one crewed by a volunteer consciousness from the archive. Dane's expression grew solemn. The archive contained the digitized minds of every human military commander who had chosen digital immortality over physical death. Heroes, legends, tacticians who had earned their immortality through sacrifice. They're still debating, Holt observed, his awareness extending across space to monitor the hegemony high command. Fear wars with pride in their decision-making process. What do you think they'll choose, sir? Holt's form materialized beside his soldier, more human now than digital construct. They'll choose survival. They're apex predators, but they're not stupid. When faced with extinction, even the proudest species learns humility. As if summoned by his words, communication arrays throughout human space began receiving a priority transmission from Keth Moran. Overlord Zixandra's crystalline features appeared on screens across Earth's defensive grid. People of Earth, she began, her voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of existence. The hegemony accepts your terms. All human territories will be evacuated within 1 solar year. All human prisoners will be released immediately. Reparations will be negotiated through neutral parties. She paused, her ancient eyes reflecting something that might have been respect. We acknowledge that humanity has evolved beyond our ability to contain or control. This conflict serves neither of our species. Let this be the beginning of a new understanding between our peoples. In his quantum cathedral, Admiral Holt smiled with satisfaction. The war that might have consumed half the galaxy had been prevented by the simple demonstration of power coupled with restraint. But more importantly, Lieutenant Dane and thousands like him would never again face torture at alien hands. Mission accomplished, sir? Dane asked. For now, Holt replied. But stay vigilant, Lieutenant. The galaxy is vast, and there are always those who mistake mercy for weakness. The Revenant began to fade from normal space, returning to the quantum dimensions, where Earth's phantom fleet maintained their eternal watch. They had become humanity's guardian angels, digital spirits bound to ships that existed beyond conventional reality, forever protecting their species from threats that conventional warfare could never address. In the depths of space, where starlight bent around impossible geometries, Admiral Kyrix Holt's laughter echoed through dimensions, the laughter of a man who had found a way to keep his promises even after death. The hegemony had learned an important lesson. Humans might forgive, but they never forget. And in a universe where mercy was rare, it was wise not to test the patience of those who offered it. The stars themselves would remember that one human soldier's suffering had awakened something magnificent and terrible, and that Earth's children would never walk alone in the dark again.